Good morning. Today we're fortunate to have member musician Diane Freeman play the native flute for us. You can read more about Diane in the order of service. Her first piece is Rekindle the Fire by Mary Youngblood. Welcome, Diane. Thank you so much, Diane. Our opening words this morning were written by Brené Brown. True belonging is not passive. It's not the belonging that comes with just joining a group. It's not fitting in or pretending or selling out because it's safer. It's a practice that requires us to be vulnerable, get uncomfortable, and learn how to be present with people without sacrificing who we are. In just a moment, we'll begin our opening hymn entitled "We Would Be One." Many of you may be aware that Unitarians and Universalists merged in 1961 to form the Unitarian Universalist Association. It's possible you don't know that for years before that, the youth organizations of the two faiths had been holding their annual youth conference together, helping set the stage for the merger that would follow. Unitarian minister Reverend Samuel Anthony Wright wrote hymn lyrics especially for the joint youth conference of 1953-54, 7 years before the eventual merger. He wrote the hymn to promote the unity of the two groups of young people as they led the way to merger. And that is the story of hymn number 318, We Would Be One. Please rise in body or spirit and join in singing both verses of number 318. Our Director of Lifespan Religious Education, Beth Curtis, will present The Time for All Ages.
Did I hear an arg? All right, that's the spirit. Me forgot my glasses. We'll see if we have a pair in here. Had to remember a lot of things this morning. I know. And I have, oh my goodness. Oh, those will work. Thank you. Whoa. Okay. Whoa. Happy Pirate Week! Arrgh! Me mateys have been working hard learning the skills we need today for Pirate Week. But before we start the challenge, I must tell ye a little story about a fella named Pirate Pete. The name of the book is Pirate Pete and His Smelly Feet. Written by Lucky Rowland and Mark Chambers. Old Pirate Pete had the smelliest feet, the cheesiest feet on the sea. Each time he walked by, all his shipmates would cry, "Ah, what a bad stink, dearie me." The captain and crew didn't know what to do. They liked to keep tidy and neat. For though they looked mean, they were really quite clean. And they'd all had enough of Pete's feet. They found a big tub and they gave Pete a scrub, but the water was murky and black. It didn't take long before they noticed a pong. And they realized the smell had come back. The captain said, "Crew, there's just one thing to do. It's time that old Pete walked the plank." Pete sniffled, "Farewell." Then splash and he fell, and ever so slowly he sank. The seaweed, it swirled round Pete's feet as he whirled through the sea with a swoosh and a swish. He turned a bit pink when his terrible stink disturbed all the poor little fish. By the time he found land, Pete was covered in sand. He stomped through the leaves and the dirt. He squelched through some tar, and he wandered so far that even his toenails did hurt. But then came a yelp, someone calling for help. Old Pirate Pete looked around. As he looked to the seas, my friend, oops, I'm sorry, I must have, okay. He heard, "Please, help us, please," as he looked to the seas. "My friends are in trouble," he frowned. And there by the boat, which was barely afloat, were 3 hungry sharks in a row. The pirates looked pale as they clung to the sail, and the sharks circled slowly below. Old Pete scratched his head. "I must help them," he said. The pirates looked close to defeat. Just then from the sea came a strong pong of brie, and the captain called out, "Look, it's Pete." Pete's feet caked in tar could be smelt from afar, but the pirates just shouted, "Hooray!" 'Cause the sharks took one sniff of that terrible whiff, and they turned and swam quickly away. Standing slight upwind, the pirates all grinned. 3 cheers for Pete's foul-smelling feet. From then on, the crew and the captain, too, weren't nearly as clean or neat. And if the sharks were around, then the crew could be found wafting their toes in the breeze. And if the sharks were around, then the crew could be found, oh, I said that, wafting their toes in the breeze, with handfuls of stinky cheese. The end. So, today our crew is going to continue the adventures of Pirate Pete. Pirate Pete forgave our crew for making him walk the plank, and he became so useful, so heroic, that he has been promoted to captain. So now it's Captain Pete. Oh, but he still has the smelly feet. Well, Captain Pete has been kidnapped, or should I say captain-napped, by the terrible pirate, the scourge of the seas, the black serpent of the deep, Captain Dreadbreath Butternuts. Oh, don't ever tease him about his name. It's not a good idea. Our crew has been working hard on our mapping skills, our wayfinding skills, and honing our innate cleverness so that we can free Captain Pete. Now, some say Pirate Day is just an excuse to have pirate food. Well, I want to thank Liz Baldwin and John Wrightington for helping us out with that. Now, all ye landlubbers, please wait till the pirates have had their chance to pillage the pirate food before ye digs in. Now, I want y'all to wish us well by saying arg. Arg. I can't hear you. Arg. Excellent. I now invite Mia Moore to come forward, if she dare, to light the children's chalice, which passes the flame of religious exploration from one generation to the next. As the children proceed back to their classes, I ask the congregation to remain seated as we sing Yo Ho Ho and a Barrel of Rum. Oh no, sorry. Hymn number 413, Go Now in Peace. But sing it like a shanty, with an arg at the end of each line.
Thank you, Beth. That was fun. Good morning. My name is Elizabeth DeCoux, and it's my privilege to serve as your worship leader here this morning. Whoever you are, whatever path brought you to our door, we're so glad that you're here. We are a progressive church whose mission is to create and nourish a loving community that seeks justice and respect for all. I especially want to welcome any first-time or returning visitors. If you are a visitor, we hope that if you haven't already done so, you'll stop by the welcome table near the entrance so we can greet you and get to know you better. If you have questions, ask just about anyone. We'll be glad to try to answer, and if we don't know, we'll find someone who does. I invite you to join us in the back of the sanctuary after the service for coffee, refreshments, and fellowship. remembering, please, to let the young people go first to the Pirate Day food. I ask you, please, to turn off or silence your phone to help create an atmosphere conducive to worship. You will find that as Unitarian Universalists, we invite you to know us not by our creeds, but by our deeds. That's because we have no shared mandatory creed in Unitarian Universalism. What holds us together instead is covenant. So I invite everyone to join in speaking our congregational covenant. You will find the words in the order of service. Please join me. We covenant to engage one another with honesty, kindness, and respect, to value diversity, seek understanding of our differences, and practice gracious accountability with care, love, and empathy. We make these promises to those who are here and those yet to come, so that we may be a safe, welcoming, and beloved community of acceptance, learning, and transformation. The flaming chalice is a symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith. Lighting our chalice binds us together across both distance and time to Unitarian Universalists who enact this same ritual in worship services across the world and who have done so for many years. It also unites us to all those who will light a chalice as a symbol of our faith in the years to come, whether in this sanctuary or in places far away. I invite Jason and Heather Chappell to come forward and light our chalice this morning. As they light this sacred flame, please hear these words of Edward Markham. He drew a circle that shut me out, heretic, rebel, a thing to flout. But love and I had the will and wit to win. We drew a circle that took him in. Thank you, Jason and Heather. I invite you to rise in body or spirit and join in singing our call to worship. You will find the words printed in your order of service. Thank you so much, Diane. That was beautiful. Unitarian Universalists have chosen 6 spiritual values to embody our faith, with love at the center of the 6. One of those spiritual values is generosity. Because we are a self-sustaining congregation, your generous pledges and gifts are essential to carrying out the work and mission of this church. As our offertory ushers, John Wrightington and Jim Wood, come forward this morning, I invite you to participate in the blessed practice of giving. Whether you give by using the QR code in the order of service or the link on our website, whatever method you choose for giving, I invite you to take the plate when it comes to you this morning and hand it to your neighbor as part of this ritual. At the conclusion of the offering, I'll invite you to rise in body or spirit and join in singing hymn number 123, Spirit of Life.
Good morning. Honestly, I did not intend to be the go-to cover band for the sermons written by Reverend Rod Richards. This is, I believe, the 5th one of his that I've gotten to share with you over the past couple of years. The last one as recently as a month ago. But the worship team finds them, sees that they're available, so am I, and they're good. All of them. It truly is an honor to present his thoughts and his words to you. So, coming to you direct from the pulpit of Unitarian Universalists of San Luis Obispo, California, Reverend Richard's sermon, Long to Belong, begins with a reading by Marina Keegan. It's been adapted from her graduation address from Yale University. She was an author, journalist, and playwright, and this is her most famous work. It's called The Opposite of Loneliness. And again, this was originally presented to her graduating class. We don't have a word for the opposite of loneliness. But if we did, I could say that's what I want in life. What I'm grateful and thankful to have found here, and what I'm scared of losing when I wake up tomorrow and leave this place. It's not quite love. It's not quite community. It's just this feeling that there are people, an abundance of people, who are in this together, who are on the same team. This is a place full of tiny circles we pull around ourselves, tiny groups that make us feel loved and safe and part of something even on our loneliest nights. And we won't have that next year. Now, this scares me. More than finding the right job or the right city or the right spouse, I'm scared of losing this web we're in, this elusive, indefinable opposite of loneliness. This feeling I feel right now. Reverend Richards begins. What is the opposite of loneliness? Marina Keegan, in her poignant and beautiful essay, says there isn't a word for it, and I believe she's right. Oh, I know, you can Google antonyms, go on to thesaurus.com, and you'll find unhelpful suggestions like unlonely, which is an utter cop-out, or sociable, close, loved. They're all good things to be, but they miss the point on being the opposite of loneliness. Or these: frequented, populated, inhabited, which obviously refer to lonely places rather than lonely people. None of these quite fit. And yet, I feel like I know exactly what Ms. Keegan meant when she described it as not quite love, not quite community. It's just the feeling that there are people, an abundance of people, who are in this together, who are on your team. And though, as I said, I don't think there is a word for the opposite of loneliness that fits precisely, I will offer one this morning which I think comes close. Belonging. The opposite of loneliness might be something like belonging. We all long to belong. Not that belonging arrives for us without its own set of complexities. Belonging, after all, can have more than one meaning. Belonging can refer to being included in a group of people who are in this together, who are all on the same team, but it can also refer to possessions, to ownership, my belongings. This belongs to me. Does that belong to you? Now, I realize words can have more than one meaning. Such meanings can be clarified by context, but in this case, I think the meanings can possibly overlap in sometimes disturbing ways. For instance, people in love saying, "We belong together," can easily morph into one or the other or both saying, "You belong to me." See how that moved from being on the same team to ownership? And while I realize that "you belong to me" and "I belong to you" are popular phrases in love songs and love poems throughout the ages, that only makes it more creepy, doesn't it? If you look at what the words express, it's asserting ownership rights. Now, I'm not saying that anyone, everyone who penned or keyed or crooned those words meant that, but I am saying that in the attempt to overcome loneliness, to attain a sense of belonging, there can be, sometimes, depending on what is required of us to belong, there can be a movement from being accepted by a group or a person or a community or a relationship that may be more accurately described as being owned by said group or person or community, when groups become insular, shielding themselves against any critique from inside or out, when groups demand unquestioning loyalty, when insiders are protected to a fault, when outsiders are dismissed to a fault. When these things occur, one must ask what belonging means, which belonging we're talking about. You hear about this in street gangs, crime families. You hear from those who have been members about the power of that utter loyalty to those within and the extreme danger and degradation that stems from the utter disregard and lack of concern for those without. And it's not unique to those we identify as criminals. That same syndrome can happen in political parties and movements, activist groups, fraternities, sororities, in religious groups and social cliques, on campuses, in kindergartens, and within corporations, in families, among friends, under the banners of faith or freedom or football or Facebook. The loyalty to who and where and what we belong to, the gratitude for feeling to be a part of something, it can ramp up to the point, if we're not careful, and especially if the group welcomes or even demands this kind of perverted loyalty, it can ramp up to the point when we really don't care about anyone else, do we? We really don't listen to anyone outside. We are accepted and connected and protected within the group, and that's enough. But is it? Is that truly what people are seeking? You see, belonging, even in its healthiest expressions, always requires something of us, if only the willingness on our own part to be accepted. That in itself takes work sometime, to accept for ourselves the acceptance that is offered. Belonging always requires something. Question is, what is required? Some of you may be aware of a certain suspicion around joining that is, or at least has been, characteristics of Unitarian Universalists. Grounded in the self-reliant tradition giving expression in the work of, here he is again, Ralph Waldo Emerson, and trusting an individual's lived experience as the sacred text from which to make meaning, we tend to be a little wary of groups, even our own Unitarian Universalist groups. There's a story of the UU who tells her friend, "You should really come to our congregation. I think you're a Unitarian Universalist at heart." The friend says, "Well, I don't know. I'm not much of a joiner." The friend says, "See, I knew it. That proves it." Speaking very generally, of course, UUs don't know how to feel about joining, especially about joining something called a religious community. It smacks of conformity, compromise, conversion. People may have had experiences joining other organizations or groups or communities in their lives where they came to realize that what was required was to believe something or pretend to believe something that they weren't able to believe. An experience of belonging slowly changed into an experience of displacement. They realized that to be true to themselves, they had to be themselves within the group, to be honest and authentic, and to do that was to put them somehow at odds with the requirements or expectations of belonging to that group. It's understandable. It happens. There's nothing wrong with the individual or the group necessarily. It just might not be a good match. However, that led some people to a decision to either never join another group or to only join groups from whom nothing was required, thus maintaining their individual integrity. And this is, I would suggest, a bit of an overreaction and not the healthiest way forward. It doesn't, after all, speak to that innate longing to belong, and I believe that's real. I suspect it is something that resides within all of us, and belonging always requires something. And the question is, what does it require? Our traditional first UU principle, which will always be part of us in spirit, if not necessarily in text, said that we affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Now, many have pointed out that this principle, given that it was often offered in isolation from the other principles, and given its pride of place, the first principle, it's problematic in valuing the individual over and above the community. Everyone can see where a rampant, unchecked individualism has brought us. And, pulling back a little, I have to wonder, how else can we truly affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person, but in community? Through compromise and covenant and commitment to the greater good? By nurturing spiritual growth and practicing justice? Was this principle talking about my inherent worth and dignity? Yes, and also about yours and yours and yours and yours. Never forget that you are absolutely unique, just like everyone else. Now, that quote has been misattributed to Margaret Mead, but I find it even more appropriate that the source is anonymous. Once again, I must face up to the fact that it's not all about me. It's about belonging to something bigger. It's about people, an abundance of people who are in this together, looking to create and sustain a congregation, a community, a society, a world that truly honors the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Any tiny shred of doubt any of us may have had about whether or not this is important should be swept away by the ongoing news of harassment, intimidation, discrimination, and humiliation suffered by individuals and marginalized groups in our communities and in the wider world. And that's one of the unspoken requirements of belonging here that I wish to speak today. I don't think it'll come as a big surprise, so many of you do this so beautifully in big and small ways, but it helps to be reminded. So much of what we do together is reminding ourselves and one another of our highest aspirations. One of the expectations for those who have come to feel that they belong is to make someone else feel like they belong. It may be someone just walking through our doors. It may be someone who's been coming for a while, but is a little unsure about where or if they fit. It may be someone not yet here, or here for years and suddenly feeling displaced. I'm not saying that everyone is going to necessarily want to belong to our congregation, but we can make the opportunity available. If you felt accepted, offer that experience, that acceptance to another. And it doesn't end there with only us. At our best, belonging here will not disconnect you from the world out there, but will connect you in positive and powerful ways. And let's look for a moment at the words of author and UU minister Mark Morrison Reed. It's actually reading number 580 in the Gray Hymnal. He says, "The central task of the religious community is to unveil the bonds that bind each to all. There is a connectedness, a relationship discovered amid the particulars of our own lives and the lives of others. Once felt, it inspires us to act for justice. It is the church that assures us that we are not struggling for justice on our own, but as members of a larger community. The religious community is essential, for alone our vision is too narrow to see all that must be seen, and our strength too limited to do all that must be done. Together, our vision widens and our strength is renewed. In Marina Keegan's words, it's just this feeling that there are people, an abundance of people, who are in this together, who are on your team. Together, our vision widens and our strength is renewed. And that jumped out to me in preparation for this sermon. That's not a bad measure for our health as a community. That's not a bad measure for the health of our definition of belonging. At our best, belonging here will widen your vision and renew your strength. Have you ever been in a group where you could say of it, together our vision narrows? Together our vision narrows and our strength is spent pointing accusing fingers at everyone else? I wonder if such groups exist. No, believe me, I get it. I have been an active and enthusiastic participant in such groups. We, in congregations like ours, are not immune from the possibility of becoming that group. But at our best, our vision is not narrowed by being together, but widened. And widening our vision does not mean that every opinion or perspective or approach or priority is equal. It does not mean that we do not commit ourselves to action based on our best understanding. There are those things which affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person and respect for the interdependent web of all existence, and those things which don't. And it is our responsibility to speak out and act out and always live out our principles, our small p principles, as best we can. But I also realize that my vision alone is too narrow, that there are things of which I am not aware that can cause me to inadvertently or carelessly betray my own highest aspirations. And so I rely on you all and on people out there to widen my vision. And our strength is renewed. Belonging should offer renewal. I know that many of you work so hard that I can't help but think that there are times when you leave these services exhausted and drained. I know many are deeply troubled by what is happening out there in the world today, saddened by the ugly trends and fearful of the future. And that leaves us feeling exhausted and drained. I hope that belonging, knowing that there are people, an abundance of people who are in this together, I hope knowing that helps to strengthen your spirit. I hope that the tiny circles we create and pull around ourselves, tiny groups that make us feel loved and safe and part of something, I hope that they help to renew you when life feels overwhelming. And I hope that you have a sense of the gift that congregations like ours are to the world, and the importance of your participation in keeping this congregation alive and vibrant and engaged. And I hope that whatever good you find, you will find a way to share that in the wider world. Because these congregations to which we belong are not a given. They only exist through those who choose to make it so. We who belong. We don't wish to lose this web we're in, this elusive, indefinable opposite of loneliness. This feeling I feel right now. Reverend Rod Richards.
Thank you so much, David. Please rise in body or spirit and join in singing our closing hymn, number 311, Let It Be a Dance. We will sing all the verses. Please remain standing afterward for the benediction and extinguishing of the chalice. I invite Jason and Heather Chappell to return to extinguish these flames, extinguishing the chalice last, as I read the words of Gordon McKeeman. The worship of the gathered community is now ended. Go in peace, go in joy, go in love, to share in the ongoing worship of the community in dispersion. Carry with you what is precious to us all: reverence for all that exists, beauty that displays itself in love, and deep, abiding peace. Amen, and blessed be.